I'm honored to introduce our speaker tonight, Amy Jauman. Amy is a certified social media strategist and a certified instructor through the National Institute for Social Media. She has a master's degree in experiential education and a doctorate in organizational development. Tonight, Amy will speak to us about marketing and communications related to communicating with current and future readers about your book. Thank you for joining us, Amy.
Thank you, Anne. Such a lovely introduction, and it's so nice to see you. And Anne was also the lovely person who was kind enough to recruit me to come and hang out with all of you tonight. So I appreciate the invitation. I am waging a little battle here with my screen. I got one of those lovely updates with my whole system. So you know how like when you have, different things update, programs or whatever, but then sometimes you have your whole computer system update. I had that today. And as luck would have it, it happened just before I was going into a meeting, which is always great, isn't it? When your whole computer shuts down and you're getting ready to gear up and talk to somebody. So in any case, like Anne said, as I kind of do battle with moving things around on my system here, my name is Amy Jauman. I'm going to talk about managing your digital presence. And I am going to go through really just a handful of tips and pieces of advice. And I'm hoping that somewhere along the line, you are able to pick up some stuff that you can apply directly and immediately. So, all right. So since Anne already shared a little bit about me, I am going to skip past my intro slide, but I do believe my contact information is going to be available. So at the end of our time tonight, I'll hang out for a Q&A. So please send questions in, ask them kind of as you have them. But also I just want to say now, so that I don't forget, if as you are noodling on content, something comes to you a couple of days from now, if you want to shoot me a message, I'm always happy to brainstorm with writers, especially around social media content. This is especially because one of the things I have learned as a teacher in so many different arenas is that I learn as much from teaching and being part of a community as I do by attending sessions like this. I told the people that were on earlier, I was just in a podcasting session, and I attend a lot of sessions like this, but I love teaching them as well. And then I love the conversations that happen afterwards. So please feel free to reach out. So we are going to talk a little bit about social media content, figuring out what's valuable, what's not, what all that looks like. And then also how to inspire engagement amongst your readers. So one of the things, and I'll talk a little bit about the difference between media and social media. And one of the differences is this two-way conversation that social media allows us to have, and the power behind having a digital presence. The final piece that I'll talk just a little bit about is a quick tip around time management and doing more if you find yourself having limited time. Now, it might just be me that is short on time. Maybe all of you are like, no, I wish I had more to do. But I do typically find that people are open to time management ideas. The challenge with talking about this kind of a topic with anyone, so I talk to writers, authors, all the way up to people who work in, food service and making widgets. It doesn't matter where you are. The challenge that we all see with coming up with our presence in the digital space is that there isn't a one size fits all. It is about coming together and talking about what different people are doing, examining what's working in different arenas, and thinking about how it applies to your book, your message, your community. So I tried to share a lot of book examples throughout the presentation, but I also threw some in here that just aren't book examples at all. And I did that really intentionally because I would encourage you, as you look out at marketing, which is happening, by the way, to all of us all the time. You can't get away from it. I encourage you to continually learn and think about all of the opportunities that the people around you have capitalized on. So if you are, you find yourself going out to pick the paper up from the bottom of your driveway, because let's say you're one of the people that still gets a paper delivered every day, and you pick that newspaper up and you notice, oh, there's a plastic wrap on the bag, and there's something printed on that plastic wrap. Well, it's an advertisement. You better believe that there are people out there that are thinking of things like that, that are thinking of where they can put their message, where somebody will see it. You'll be driving in traffic, and you might notice that somebody has put something on the side of their car. Well, why would they do that? Well, because somebody somewhere along the line thought, boy, how often am I sitting in traffic? And I just kind of look around, and lo and behold, there's a surface area there that could have an advertisement. So stay open to all of the ideas that are out there, whether they're being used for books or not, or just stay open to what might be coming to your way. So where do you get these ideas? Look at your competitors, look at what competitors are doing on their social media posts. Don't rule out competitors that are bigger than you, better than you, have more money than you. When I teach marketing classes, I ban anything about Nike or Apple, just because it's too easy. And my students love talking about it because they do these really cool campaigns, but it doesn't mean you can't still learn from them. You can't still break down, why is it that this message works? I think there is a great amount to be learned from anybody with any size of campaign if you're open to it. I also always encourage people to do trainings like this, even if you are really busy. You have to listen to the recording. You have to have it playing in the background while you're chopping vegetables for dinner, whatever it is. Just that kind of slow exposure. You never know, if you walk away from a session like this and you come up with one or two ideas, it might be that turning point that can really kind of set a path on fire for you to be successful. And then I also want to encourage you to consider multiple mediums outside of what we talk about today. So I'm not going to do a Facebook training and tell you what buttons push where and all that good stuff. I'm going to reference platforms and things like that. But remember that media is forever expanding. And a lot of times when I talk about a digital presence, I of course focus on social media. It's what people think of when they usually come and ask me questions. But remember that all those pieces within media are continually expanding, and people are forever finding different ways of connecting on different modes of mediums. Podcasts being one example that I think it was in about 2017 or so. They really, really exploded onto the scene. And then, like any good new idea and tool, people started to figure out how to make money off of them. They started, figuring out how to advertise with them, how to do, paid elements and all that. And that provided us with the opportunity to leverage them. And then finally, other writers. I think other writers and coming together to sessions like this, or I know there's a couple people here who are also in Sisters in Crime. There are groups all over the place, and they get together and they say, hey, I tried this and it worked, or I tried this and it didn't work, or I tried this, why isn't it working? Any of those questions amongst a group of people, even if they're writing different content, because we share that one content creation, that one writing element, it is going to be good enough to probably get you to that next stage that you're looking for. So let's jump in and talk a little bit about social media content and just really start by giving you kind of some ideas right off the bat. So the first thing I want to kind of plant a seed about is that to get you thinking about what your options are for digital content and what you may need to know about each of them. So a good place to start is to kind of run down the list of all the social media platforms that are out there that you can think of, as well as other sites that authors may utilize or leverage. I didn't include sites in here like Book Sweeps or kind of some of those organizations really kind of designed for promoting books or buy-ins, or there's all kinds of sites, but this is just meant to kind of get you started. So what is the point about starting with a list of what your options are? I think it's a good place to start because then you can start to make some decisions about where to spend your time. So being smart about what it is that you're able to do and frankly, what you want to do is a really important distinction. So because if you commit yourself to doing work that you don't want to do, you're going to pretty quickly fail. And then as you kind of move through that process and you kind of invest some time to learn about the digital space of it, you can start to investigate the demographics of these platforms and see how it matches up to your audience. And especially if you move between demographics. So for example, so my background, under my own name, I have published probably more textbooks and kind of in that academic space. So now doing research in this citizen investigation and true crime genre, this is going to require me to pivot a little bit because even though I am still writing, still researching, still in the nonfiction realm, my audience has moved, right? My audience is coming to me for a different reason, and my audience is probably hanging out and spending time in these different places. So I have to go back to the drawing board and think about, okay, what are the platforms I'm exploring? Who's on those platforms? And do they match up to the book I am looking to promote? So the other important piece, and you can learn from your competitors, and you might also just be able to learn just by looking at the pages, is to figure out what is the content that's going to do really well. So one example that I like to share that I don't know why, but when I heard this, it just struck me as so like, I don't know why I didn't realize it on my own, but YouTube is the world's second largest search engine, right? It's second only to Google. So someone told me this and I was like, oh, why is YouTube second to Google? And I just hadn't really thought about it before. And it's all the DIY videos. The number of people that go to YouTube to figure out how to do something is astronomical. It is a huge portion of the traffic to the site. So if that somehow ties to the content of your book, that's a pretty good place for you to be hanging out, right? If you are solving problems with your book, it may pay for you to have a presence there so that you come up in searches, so that when people go and they type in, hey, how do I entertain a 5-year-old on a rainy day when school is canceled, your book or something related to where you're an expert is what comes up. And after I'd had that conversation with someone, I had kind of a fun confirmation of what I had learned, because my fireplace broke and I had a contractor come out and he had fixed some things around my house before. And that when I looked at my fireplace, it was very intimidating to me. And I was pretty sure that if I tried to fix it, I would blow up my house, because like I just, it got pretty extreme with how I thought things could go off the rails. But he came in and he walked up to the fireplace, he looked at it and he pulled his phone out and he pulled up a YouTube video. And I asked him about it and he said, oh yeah, that's, how he fixes, us, because as our world expands and as we get more and more products and more variations and more different ways of doing everything, people have more and more questions and rely on the immediacy of information that is at our fingertips via the internet. So just another consideration, how we learn, how we interact, how we do our work, how we do our jobs is evolving, and we have the opportunity to keep up with it. So I told you a little bit about my kind of true crime world. So here's just a little application and a reminder that this kind of second step here about what we can commit to is the next really important piece. So when I started thinking about my audience, I started thinking about true crime enthusiasts and where they hang out. What do? They listen to podcasts, they read books, they watch movies, and sometimes they read blogs. Blogs aren't huge. Podcasts are much bigger. So I had to take a step back and I had to say, okay, so if I'm doing research for my book, so I was going to be pulling all this content together. So I was going to be able to double dip a little bit while I got this content together. I was going to be able to put it out what I was learning and how I was engaging with people, and kind of share my journey with the people that were engaging with me on social media. Transparency and getting to know people as an author is a huge element. So as I was thinking about that, I knew I didn't want to start a podcast. A podcast, first of all, I didn't have enough content for a podcast. And second, it's a big commitment and a lot of work. I could be a guest on a podcast, but I wasn't going to run one. I could write a blog though. Blog is no problem. I can set up a blogging site. In fact, I did. I can write a short blog, 1 or 2 a week. I can easily commit to that. I can then also publish that into a Facebook group. And I'll tell you a little bit about a Facebook group versus a Facebook page in just a minute here as we think about tools. But when I made that commitment, I knew I could do both of those things successfully. Now, where I ended up was blogging my research, so work I was doing already, but just taking that kind of extra step to share my process and my journey as I went. And then my platforms where I would have my blog, that's a digital site, right? A Facebook page. So I have an author page so I could populate there. But what's the problem with Facebook pages? The algorithm is the problem with Facebook pages. If you have a Facebook page, you probably have already realized you put content up and it goes nowhere. So having a Facebook group that people could sign up to kind of almost overrides the algorithm. If someone joins a group, so they are committed to you for whatever reason, I don't care if they like your content, I don't care if they think you're a neat person, if a friend recommended them, however you got to them, it's a fantastic way to capture a lead, put them into your group, and then you have much more control over the content that they see. So I created a Facebook group, and then I'm also committing to staying active on Twitter because the handful of agents that I've interacted with over the years have the greatest presence there, and I can use a lot of that same content. Now, that seems like a lot. It felt like a lot when I looked at it, but when I took that step back and I considered my plan, I wanted to find places where I could double dip and get as much out of each piece of content as possible. So remember, I'm doing my research, which is creating the blog. It's that same content. And then I'm sharing that on all of these sites, making each step incremental instead of each venture out into increasing my digital presence, this whole brand new big chunk, right? It's about piecing stuff out and using things multiple different times. Where do you find content? This is another question that I get. Again, this is just until we get into a little bit more of the specifics, just kind of laying some groundwork here. A lot of the feedback or questions that I get from people are all about how they create content. But another big piece of being successful is finding content. So where are your competitors drawing content, cool articles, videos, information that would be interesting to the people that would be interested in your book? What do you like? Think about what you're drawn to, what articles you click through on. And also remember that when you find a great piece of content, go and look at the source of where that piece of content came from. So let's say I'm looking for content and for my citizen investigator work, I find this really cool article, and it's maybe about the history of detective novels, and it was posted on True Detective. I want to bookmark that site because it wasn't a fluke, right? I know that this is good related content. I liked it. So then the next time I have space to fill, I'm kind of starting to build up that list of resources that I have and want to have access to. And it's my future self will thank me because it'll make generating that content that much easier. So moving on to engaging content. So my computer is still a little glitchy. I hope it is not too bad for all of you. Oh, here we go. Now I got it. I apologize for that. My bar, for whatever reason, was going all squiggly. And that is a really industry high level term. Squiggly, I'm pretty sure, is the exact computer term for what was happening there, but it unsquiggled itself. So here we go. Let's talk about engagement. So when we talk about marketing in its, let's go back 100 years. So when we think about how marketing started, it started with someone who had a message pushing that message out for someone to see and experience, right? That was probably the marketing that most of us grew up with. We saw a television commercial, we saw a billboard, we saw a newspaper, we saw a magazine article. Someone created content and they pushed it out for us to see. The content couldn't be changed. And it was a singular in dimension. What has happened with social media is we have opened the opportunity for a two-way conversation and for us to engage with our audience. This is the piece that most people just getting started in marketing miss out on. We come to the table and we're so excited to tell people everything we think they should know, right? We want to talk to people. We want them to read our book. We want to show them and just make them come and buy stuff from us, instead of inviting them to answer a question, asking them what they're thinking about, talking to them, and getting responses and answers from them. How that shifted the experience is we now move through 3 stages. The first is your book, your content floats up, becomes of interest, right? They've never heard of you before. Awareness. So it floats up, they become aware of you. And then once they become aware of you, their interest is piqued. And then they're at that point where they'd like to learn more. And then the engagement begins. They ask questions. They are going to start to leave a comment. They might think about you, might come back to you, but it's going to take 6 or 7 exposures to what it is that you are sharing with them, in all likelihood, before you break through the chaos of what they're looking for. Now, so many of us move right to the two-way communication. We fast forward and we say, hi, everyone, this is my first post. Leave a comment about what you think of my book, right? We just kind of like fast forward and we expect people to engage. They have to move through this process. And each step of this process is good and valuable to us. So there are still things that we can do to improve our odds. So I'm going to go through a couple of these things, and we're going to talk about specific types of content. And I just want to pause again here and remind everyone, this is going to be different for every single person on this call. There are going to be things that we talk about that you're going to be able to immediately say, this just does not apply to me. And that is okay. Please stay with me, because probably the next slide is going to be something that immediately resonates with you. So I have a LinkedIn example here. So tagging is an important piece on social media. And what tagging is it's just one of many ways I'm going to share with you tonight that's going to help you not take your social media and digital presence journey alone. So tagging on any social media platform means that you increase your awareness. You're going to reach more people by using usually an @ sign to essentially connect with and identify in your post someone, a person or an organization affiliated with your post. And then what happens is that person that you have tagged in the post gets an alert. So in this one, I wrote about a project I was working on. This was not a perfect project. This was horrible, but social media, we gloss over everything. I had to stuff 100 books for a conference. And I was prepping all of these books, and they were donated by the ROI Institute. So as I was talking about this, I said, I'm prepping the books from the ROI Institute, and I tagged them. That's why they're blue. And I said that St. Mary's University of Minnesota is giving away at the Twin Cities SHRM conference. So I tagged 3 people or 3 groups in that post: ROI Institute and St. Mary's and the conference that I was going to. So what that just did to the post was it beefed it up. And it sent 3 messages. It sent a message to each of the people that I tagged and said, hey, Amy Jauman just tagged you in a post, which is going to draw them back. And they're going to see this positive feedback about them. And they're going to leave a comment. They're going to they're going to engage with it, which is going to give my post a boost. Right? So the algorithm on any social media platform is going to say, this Amy person created a post and other people like it. They're reading it. They're leaving comments. So it's kind of a way of cheating the system a little bit. It's not cheating, it's using the system correctly, but it's boosting your content up by inviting other people who are involved in your message, alerting them to come and join you. Similarly, putting hashtags, and by the way, every platform has different rules about hashtags, and whatever when you make that decision about where you want to go, take a class and learn how to use that specific platform, because the rules are all different. Instagram, you're going to use a ton of hashtags. LinkedIn, they tell you not to use more than 3 or 4. So you really want to learn the platform. But what a hashtag does is it helps you join a conversation. So if you are, so in this case, for example, the conference was using hashtag celebrate 70. So that meant everybody that was affiliated with that conference was using hashtag celebrate 70. And if you clicked on it, it pulled the post up from everyone who had used that hashtag. A hashtag is like a little link that ties posts together. So what people will do is they'll click on a hashtag to find posts that they know they're going to be interested in. So if you're not including hashtags, you're kind of slicing off the opportunity to find those new followers who might be interested in your content. And remember, if somebody finds you through a hashtag, they come back to your post, they like it, they leave a content or a comment, something along those lines, you're making the algorithm happy again. So all of these things, taking time to beef up your posts and make them more meaningful, make them more kind of inclusive of other people, and having them join the conversation can be the key to getting them to rise above all the noise on social. Don't forfeit the conversation. Don't make it weird. We'll put it that way. Don't put so many hashtags and tags and things like that into a post that your readers can't read it. But do add a couple to increase that reach. So in addition to tagging, let's talk about the 3 kinds of posts. So these are just categories for you to think about. So this is something I was excited to share with you all tonight, because I think that this, if you only take away one thing when it comes to brainstorming content, I hope you take this away, because this is what I find most helpful. When I am really stuck for social media content, I sit down and I think, what content that can I share that's inspirational? What can I share that's educational? And what can I share that's funny? The reason is those are the 3 categories that get shared and get the most engagement, the most on social media. Now, here's the kicker. I told you this at the beginning, so don't act like I didn't warn you. Inspiration, education, and humor is going to be different depending on your audience. I have examples, a couple of examples. And in fact, some of the authors of these examples are on the call tonight, I noticed. So when you think about inspiration is pretty safe, but inspiration is like, do you ever see those posts that say like, you are unique like a snowflake, and it has 2 million likes? And you look at it, you're like, how does that get 2 million likes? And the struggling writers look at things like that and they just, it's almost the end of us, right? Like, how is this possible? But it speaks to our culture, right? It speaks to who we are. It speaks to the things that people respond to. So when you think about your community, what is it they need to hear? What is it they want to hear? If you write a parenting book, what is it that parents need to see, read, or hear? Education is a little different as well. If you think about levels, you want to keep it short and sweet, but education doesn't have to be statistics or clicking through to a class. One of my favorite examples of education, and I mean this, like, this was a huge learning for me. I read a post and it said, keep a black Sharpie in your bathroom drawer. And then when you buy a new product like makeup, or like those products that don't really expire, write the date that you bought it on there, because they really do expire. We just don't pay attention and we use things way longer than we should. And I read that and it was so simple, right? Put a black Sharpie so you're not gross and using stale products in your bathroom drawer. And it was like life-changing for me. It was fantastic. And this was a woman who was like a lifestyle blogger, and she was just getting the word out about living her best life and all that stuff. The point is, every single post doesn't have to change the world. It can just be little things you've learned along the way that will make other people's lives better. And I do have a Sharpie in my bathroom drawer now, thanks to that woman. And then humor is also one that can be a little dicey. There are going to be some people that, depending on your topic, you just have to nix this. There just might not be anything funny related to your topic, or what is funny might be too risky. You're smart enough to make that call. But if you can include something humorous, it tends to go over very well. So let's take a look at some examples. So our one in the middle, boom, that's the one we all think of. The best way to help others is to inspire them to find their own inspiration. That is inspiring, isn't it? That's kind of like a baseline. Everybody's going to respond to that and be like, yeah, that's nice. That's an inspiring post. And there's nothing wrong with it. This kind of a post might absolutely speak to your followers. And if it does, and if you get all kinds of engagement, that's exactly the kind of stuff that you should be pulling. You can go to Brainy Quote, get these fantastic quotes. Always look up who you're quoting. The stories I could tell you of what, yeah. Make sure you know who you're quoting. But other than that, creating graphics like this in Canva, I heard somebody mention Canva earlier. It's very easy. It's a free tool. You can copy and paste a quote, give a proper citation, create your own graphic, and you can have something that's really lovely. You can brand it. You'll notice our person in the middle here, they put their website right on the graphic. Some people do that, some people don't. Some people do a logo. I mean, you really do have so many options to play around with this. Starting from the left, we've got a slightly different kind of inspiration. And this is my point. Not everybody is inspired by a quote or a saying. Joan, shared with her on her Facebook page for her book an article about the inspirational story that is unfolding, right, and is at the heart of her book. But this is an article and a photograph. So it isn't necessarily something someone would immediately put into an inspirational category. But now think about a reader like me, Amy, over here studying true crime. I see things like that. That is inspirational to me. That makes me want to keep writing because it makes me want to help people do better, within our justice system. Is absolutely an example of an inspirational piece. And if you haven't read Joan's book, you should read it. On the far right, we've got yet another kind of inspiration. So we've got S.R. Finch, who has a wonderful Instagram page, and her book, her lovely, lovely book, has all of these throughout her story. She has these drawings, these full photos, things like that. Because of her style of writing, because of how she has created this book, how she's put this book together, this character is incredibly important, and it's her character. So she has the opportunity to show her followers behind the scenes, how she's crafting characters, how she drew them. She'll put things she changed, different stages. Now, who is this going to speak to? Anybody out there who is an artist, anybody who out there who is a creative type, who enjoys developmental processes. It's a kind of behind the scenes. People love behind the scenes. They love seeing an author's messy desk. They love seeing a print job at Kirkhouse, and just all the stuff that we don't know, the things that we don't see. It's interesting to us, and it is inspiring. It's very cool in its own way. So, all right, that's inspiration. So I hope I have convinced all of you that we all have our own kind of inspiration, and it is not going to be the same for each of us. So with education, again, far left side, we've got simple. Hey, come here, I'm doing this, right? That's at education. You've also got things like the YouTube video on the bottom of the page. I think I heard there's an upcoming event about a speaking engagement. Do you have an opportunity to teach people something? One of the things I'm looking at with my research is critical thinking. And am I going to be able to evolve something there with critical thinking and media and what all that looks like? And as I do this research, our piece is going to come out small pieces. Remember, they don't have to, a social media post doesn't have to change the world. Can it be something that even just kind of prompts someone to think about something? It can also be light. The Weather Channel did a post just asking if it had snowed in your city yet. So if they, I also have to point out that they know their audience and they were very cute. They didn't say yes or no. They said, yep, nope, right? So it is something, education and information in general is something that you can really have fun with as well. It doesn't have to be boring. Long articles, shorter is always better. But think about what your people would enjoy. So when it comes to humor, Nathan Pyle, he has obviously an easy job with humor because that's what he writes. He writes humorous stuff, but maybe you do too. So if you write humorous stuff, you can share excerpts, pieces of your books, elements of your book that are maybe presented in kind of a slightly different way. But you can also do things like outtakes, humorous considerations. Secondhand Hounds does this all the time. It is so funny. They have an amazing photographer. So Secondhand Hounds, if you didn't guess by the name, is a rescue group. And they have this amazing photographer that takes pictures of these rescue dogs, and they could be on greeting cards. These photos are so perfect, but it really helps the animals get adopted. A little sad, but it truly, like, it helps, it drastically increase click-through and all that. It's really important. And then every once in a while, they will put up a reel of the outtakes, and they're so funny. Like, people look forward to that. You've got 672 engagements on this post, and it's literally just the photographer's outtake reel of all of the pictures that didn't work. These are the kinds of things that businesses, authors included, often overlook. They forget, we get so focused on showing everybody our highlight reel, we hide behind the scenes. And a lot of times behind the scenes is what endears people to us the most. You can also share humorous content from other pages. I think that is the safest bet. So for example, if you are on Twitter and you see, something humorous, don't copy and paste it, retweet it, so you keep the original source, so you don't have to worry about anything along those lines. So, okay. An important piece now that we've gone through, so we've got tagging, we've got all of our different types of content. What I'd really also like you to think about doing is including a call to action. And a call to action is as simple as thinking about, all right, what is it that I actually want my audience to do? Do I want them to click through on something? Do I want them to engage? Do I want them to vote? Do I want them to leave a comment? Do I want them to answer a question? Never assume that people are going to read a sentence, like a declarative sentence that you have written, and then start the conversation for you. Right? You'll get a much greater response with prompts. I don't think it's a happy commentary on where we're at as a society, but we need direction, and we process it on a less conscious level. And if we just see something at a high level and we kind of read through it, we are less likely to engage than if it says something like, click here, learn more. We respond that way. I go through people's entire pages and they post all this amazing content and they have no engagement. And oftentimes a big piece of the root of it is because they have absolutely no they don't tell people what they're looking for them to do. So people just read and they move on. That wouldn't matter if you were like, hey, I'm okay with it because right now I'm just building awareness and all of that stuff. But it's always going to matter because of the algorithms. The algorithms on every single social media platform are trying to determine what is good content, and they decide what is good content based on what gets engagement. So you need to do what you can to encourage your people to engage with your posts. And by the way, now that you know that, and I know that you know that because we were all in the same session together where I told you this, engage with each other's posts more. It doesn't take much to like a post or leave a comment. And yet so many of us, when we see each other's book posts and things like that, we think, that's so great. I love this post. It's beautiful. Scroll, you would just blow right past it. It really is a simple way that we can help each other out. It doesn't cost anything. It does not hurt your feed. There is absolutely no harm in doing that. The other piece I wanted to talk about, winter themed, is reducing friction. So in the marketing world, you'll hear people talk about friction. And essentially what that is a point where people try to get to your product and can't. Like it is for some reason they are stuck. So just taking a step back, when you do put these posts together, the other thing I want you to think about is, what is their experience when they click through to read your post, leave a comment, buy a book, do whatever it is. I clicked through to a post once, not a book post, but it was a pair of shoes, I may as well tell you. And it was fantastic. I saw these shoes. I'm like, I love these shoes. I love them so much. And I clicked through and I got to a page with like 100 pairs of shoes on it. And I couldn't see the shoes I wanted to buy anymore. That page, I guarantee you, if they looked at the analytics, they would identify as the issue was they were clicking through to the wrong page. So they were having a lot of what's called bounce. They were going to have a ton of people that would go and then just leave right away again. The good news is you can pay attention to things like that. You can, once you choose your platform, you can look at those analytics and you can say, boy, why is it that every time I had somebody attempt to engage with this post, it didn't result in a conversion? Or, why didn't this take off like I had hoped it would? A lot of times you can go through and you can figure out that it was something related to their experience. Now, unfortunately, even though digital media has made so much of this more accessible, and this just a fantastic way for us to all connect, because everything is so easy to connect to, we are much less tolerant of things that don't come to us immediately. There's an old joke, which is, it's not that old. There is a joke that is, where's the best place to hide a body? The second page of Google, because nobody ever goes to the second page of Google, right? When we put a search into a search engine, we expect that clickable link to pop up immediately. And if we don't find that answer, what do? We scratch it, we start over again. People don't want to dig, they don't want to work. So look and make sure there isn't anything impeding your customer's experience. All right. So let's talk about some of the specifics related to our work specifically as authors. So reviews, everybody wants them. We never get enough of them. So the kind of first step is actually getting them. Asking for reviews, great place to start. Asking for a follow-up and giving people a delivery date is even better. I tell people this about myself all the time. I have great intentions, but if you say, Amy, I would love it, would you be willing to read this book and leave a review for me? If I say yes, please give me a delivery date, because it means I want to do that. But as soon as I don't have an end date on something, it goes on this like stack of books on my nightstand, and it won't happen. Like I will never get to that book, because something with a date will always bump it out of the ranks. So don't be afraid to talk to the people in your community and say, look, reviews are important. Reviews are really important. I need help with this. Can you please read this, do this review? Not everybody is an author, and not everybody understands truly the value of a review. Don't be afraid to educate them and to tell them how important it is to you. There's a really good chance you have people in your community that genuinely don't understand. You can also look at, and I'm less familiar with this, there are a variety of ways of generating reviews through different sites. And I would invite everybody, if you have insights into that, to share that, because I have less access to that kind of an approach. I really do think it's good to look at the people who are reading you already. I love the idea of putting the sticker inside a book, asking for a review, or if not a sticker, like even printing it. I read a poem once at the end of a book it was short poem, was really clever, and it was, well, not clever enough for me to have memorized it, but it was very clever. And it just said something about how much reviews help authors. Don't be afraid to ask. When you do get reviews, quote them, use them in your social media. Remember Canva, Canva? You can go into Canva and you can create quotes just like this one. I'm going to use Spencer Quinn a little bit in a couple of slides here. He does this all the time. He puts a book cover out and then he puts he puts actual quotes from Amazon. If you're not following Chet, you should. Spencer Quinn actually has a social media team that promotes all of his books. They're fabulous books for starters, but he does really incredible content that's really unique. And he has a very fun main character. So all of his books are written from the perspective of his dog, of the dog. The dog's name is Chet. And so he has a really kind of loyal following, but I'll show you in a little bit some of the creative ways that he puts posts up and engages his followers as well. Cross promotion is another one I always like to mention to authors. Cross promotion works best if you can find some kind of mutually beneficial partnership. Is a restaurant in your book mentioned? See if that restaurant will sell your book in their gift shop. Do you know an event planner? See if they have an event coming to town and they might like to give everybody a book from a Minnesota author. Maybe you can sell 100 books at a discounted rate. Sometimes we get so focused on building our own audience, we overlook the opportunity to borrow from somebody else's audience. And if you can do a mutually beneficial relationship, all the better. I also wanted to make sure to mention the benefits of being a podcast guest. Whatever your book is about, whatever your area of expertise is about, there is a podcast about it. If you haven't looked, look, it's out there, I guarantee it. So if you find a podcast related to your topic and think broadly, look and see if they ever have guests on their show. And if they do, listen to the podcast and make sure their values are aligned with yours, right? You want to be careful because if it's a bad podcast right? I mean, it's not everybody. Don't just jump in, right? Do a little bit of investigation. But this is another example of a mutually beneficial partnership. You can go and help them out by being interviewed on an episode, and they can help you out by reaching an entirely new audience and promoting your book. Now, the funny part when I talk to people about being a podcast guest, I think they don't realize how much better it is than TV. You don't have to be on camera. That's amazing. Do we all realize how amazing that is? That's amazing. But it is, these podcasters, they have a system down. So they will give you a link, you'll log in just like we're talking now. They'll help you with your audio, kind of get you set up so you sound good. And then it's a conversation in most cases. They will typically give you the questions in advance so you can prepare if you'd like to. It is a neat little tool. Okay. Want to talk about virtual book tours as well. I feel like we don't talk about these enough, but especially in the pandemic, I want to encourage you to sketch one of these out. So a virtual book tour, if you're not familiar with the term, is essentially setting up like if you were an old-timey author and you were going on a book tour and you were going to hit all these different bookstores and do book signings and all that stuff, what would happen? You'd have a calendar, you'd have an agent, you'd make all these contacts. You'd say, I'm going to show up here on this date at this time, and I'm going to do this, and I'm, and here's what we're going to talk about, and all that stuff. You do the exact same thing on a virtual book tour, but all of your stops are in this virtual space. So again, you start off thinking about, okay, who's my audience? Where is my audience? What are they doing, thinking about? What are they talking about? You then go out and find out who has podcasts, blogs, publications, radio broadcasts, whatever it is, who in the virtual space is doing something, anything with your topic. And you reach out and you have a conversation with them, mutually beneficial opportunity. You're contacting them with content. If they respond to you and they're interested in interviewing you or having you do a guest blog post or whatever it is, you're then featured on their to their audience. Now, the book tour piece of this is you being smart and spacing this out so that you can cross promote on your own channels and maximize the benefit, so that you don't just have a whale of a February where you do all of these virtual events, right? You kind of space this out, and you can even highlight some upcoming stuff that you might have, and then go back to different things. It gives you the opportunity, if you spread it out and plan it a little bit, to do that. I like to say that, in very few instances, as long as the person you're connecting with has a good reputation, you're probably fine. Don't worry about them being too small or not worth your time or anything like that. You'll probably be fine in this virtual space. It's a pretty minimal investment. Don't overlook things like, so many local libraries are doing virtual events now. So I hear people say things like, oh yeah, that my local library, Hennepin County Library, they're having me in, and I'm doing this like book reading thing, blah, 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 over Zoom. Well, you can do that in Alabama too, right? This is a fantastic time to be connecting with local libraries because so many of them are doing these virtual events. Just takes a little bit of research online. So I've got just a couple more things to share with you. And I do see there's a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to wrap up the content in about the next 5 minutes, and then I'll do questions. I'll pause and ask Jennifer if there's anything else I need at the top of the hour, but then I'll jump right into questions. So I promised I'd come back to Chet and Bernie. Bernie's the private investigator, Chets the dog. So what Spencer Quinn has done is he's started a couple of cool things. That one of the things he does is on Sundays, they do beginnings. And his post on Sunday always says the same thing. On Sundays, we do beginnings. And then he talks about something that was an early book, maybe the introduction of a character for the first time. But he does it every single Sunday. And it's something that makes it easier for him to write, right? Because he's always got a writing prompt. And it's something that his audience comes to look for. And he chose beginnings is so generic, right? He'll write about the first book that was an audiobook. He'll write about, just any number. The first time Bernie in the books is famous for wearing Hawaiian shirts. He'll write about the first time he wrote about a Hawaiian shirt. He'll put that description in there, right? But his audience loves reading about it. It's fun. It's this insight into the character. Another really cool thing that he did is every month he has people send pictures in of their dog. Yes, I have submitted. Yes, I have not won 3 different times. The random number generator selects Chet's friend of the month, and his profile picture becomes Chet's friend of the month for that month. People flock to this. They love it, right? They love engaging. He does it every single month. It's just this really fun thing. What does that look like for you? I don't know. It's different for all of us. But look at how silly these little things are. And yet I cut that one off, but the engagement is off the charts, and people just really have fun with it. One of the biggest things we miss in social media, in my personal opinion, is we forget to be social, right? Share, have fun, talk, engage with people. And this is my last little bit on time management. So one of my favorite things to do is minimize effort, maximize results. So use every piece of content over and over as much as you can. So create a chart like this. And let's say you write one blog post. All right. So you're going to post the blog. That's a piece of content. Then you've got a link to the blog now, so you can share it on all these platforms. Maybe there's something in the blog that has little pieces that could become an infographic. Well, how about instead of sharing the blog, you just share a quote from the blog, and on and on and on. But give yourself some blanks, brainstorm, and then keep this in front of you so that the next time you write a blog, you have all these little reminders of the different ways you can use the exact same content. It is exhausting to continually go back to the drawing board and start with new work. So just think about, how can I share this event that I'm going to be at? Well, I can share the registration. I can talk about somebody else who's going to be there. Maybe I get interviewed for the event, right? What about if something was related to what I did was in the news? On and on and on, all the way down the line. but keep this kind of structure so that you can continually fall back to it and learn from it. And whenever possible, keep a few pieces of evergreen content in your back pocket. So evergreen content is content that it doesn't matter when you post it, it's always relevant. Inspirational posts are a classic example. Okay. I'm going to just share these because I don't have information. I'm just going to share the deck with everybody. And, but these are just things to remember. Things like paid ads, just reminding you about partnerships. Well, that seemed like much more than it actually was. It was only 2 slides, but this is it. This is everything we covered. So I went a tiny bit over. Jennifer, am I okay to just start answering questions?
Yeah, I think there might have been a few inserted in the chat already, and we have our president, Nate Runquist from New Rivers Press is here as well, so he can help moderate the questions in the chat.
Okay, what's the best? Should I just go through the questions? I do have some, or Nate, are you all organized and do you have them ready?
Why don't you go for the ones you've got and I'll call through, make sure I catch them all. Just
okay, I'm going to do
them
the
all
private
together
chat
first.
ones because obviously you can't see those. That probably didn't need to be stated, did it? All right, so here is the first one. How do you use and follow up on the LinkedIn message of what companies have looked at my LinkedIn page this week? Oh, I love that. Okay, so if you're on LinkedIn, you're going to get this little alert and it's going to say, blah, blah, blah person was on your page, or it's going to give you some kind of indication that people were trying to connect with you, or for some reason you popped up in somebody's search. Pay attention to those kinds of alerts because it means you're at that interest stage, right? Awareness happened, they kind of moved over to interest. Now, the tricky part about answering this question is it does kind of depend on what you want to get from the relationship. So ask yourself that question. If it's a person, right? So for me personally, if it's a person, I will reach out to them and I will say, hey, it looks like we have these things kind of overlapping and in common. Usually that is received very well just by doing a connection. So on LinkedIn, you go to like a little drop down, you hit connect, and then it prompts you to leave them a message. That's where you type in, it looks like we might be able to connect on these kind of specific topics. Always leave that message, always let them know where you have that overlapping connection. And because they were checking you out first, they will probably connect back. And from there, you can start the conversation. When you have an overlap with organizations or if it's less specific, you can't run with that as much, except to reverse trigger the algorithm and go back to their page and engage with their content and see if that will trigger them to come back and connect and talk to you. Okay, going back to the private direct messages, I shouldn't say. When do all these activities to promote your book, when doing all these activities to promote your book, when will you have time to write, visit with your family? I don't, I forfeited all of it. No, so time management is incredibly important. That's why double dipping and getting the most out of everything is critically important. So here's what I tell people to do. When you choose your social media plan, rank everything that you want to do, and then always work in that same order. So for example, I shared at the heart of mine is writing this blog. The blog will have a presence. It will get my name out. I'll reach people. I'll have followers. It'll live a little bit on its own. My next step is to share to my Facebook group because that's going to be quick and easy. And it's going to be the next most valuable thing that I can do. But if I can't get to that some week, it's okay because I ranked how important all these steps were. But let's say I do. Let's say I do get to that. My next stage is then getting to my regular Facebook page and maybe over to Twitter, right? So the key in my opinion to staying healthy, to managing all of that is making that plan and really sticking to it and really thinking about, okay, what can I realistically do? And talk about the pie and the extra stuff. Do that, keep that on your radar as well, but only commit to the stuff that you think is manageable and do it well. Okay, those are all of my direct messages. Should we start back up at the top? Nietzsche, you have one for me? Queued up?
Yeah, I do. Somebody name checked NetGalley. It wasn't really a question, but I figured that seems to be an interesting opportunity for folks. So I was wondering if you wanted to talk about your experience with it or how it works for folks who aren't familiar.
I am not familiar with it myself.
Okay, so as far as I'm aware, and Megan, you might be able to share a bit more. It's kind of a repository online where folks can post galleys, digital galleys, and then reviewers would also be able to access those. Megan
Yeah.
Carney put that up. I don't know if you have any more you want to share with that.
Sure. So it's just a way to offer the book up for review. I hire this company to handle the listings because you want to kind of sort out the people who actually do reviews from the people who are just looking to get free books. So, if you want to do that on your own time, cool, but I don't. So I have pay a bit of money for someone to do it. And then the reviews get posted. They ask that the reviews get posted on Amazon or Goodreads, and hopefully you get a few. That's all it is.
Nice. I'm always interested in those types of sites where people have had success because I've done it so minimally and I have not had a lot of luck. So that's very helpful. Thank you for sharing that.
I just wanted to mention too that IBPA offers a discount if you're a member for NetGalley. So check that out. I use it for my clients quite often.
Just missed this boat. I'm writing it down. That's not good. The presenter is taking notes, people. The world has gone sideways. All right. I think the next one I have up is online communities. Can I tackle that one? That work?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Kelly put in the question. So online communities, how they can work for us. So this is huge for so many books, especially ones that have a very specific niche that you can serve. So this is a great example of where you can test out what's called ethnographic research. So it's essentially going and reading what people are talking about, what language people are using, what words they're choosing, what topics keep coming up over and over and over again, like what really interests them. And the value of those online communities is a two-way street in my experience. The people that don't get a lot out of them are the people that show up and try to take instead of being an active contributing member to the community. So just like managing your digital presence, you will be much more successful if you choose a small number of communities that you can be an active and valuable member in, and choose wisely, right? Choose maybe the larger groups where you're going to get a little more mileage out of your effort, but leave comments, share. The kind of guideline is give 90%, ask 10% of the time, right? So if you go into online communities and say, I could really use some book reviews, you're going to get nothing. But if you spend a year cultivating relationships, leaving comments, encouraging other people, and you put a post and say, I could really use some book reviews, you're going to get responses because you become a part of that community. It's also, like I said at the beginning, a great way to farm data. It's a great way to see the people that are reading your book, interested in your book. What are they talking about? How are different things impacting them? True crime is an easy example because of the news, so my true crime groups are always the first ones that tell me what is going to interest people. They get it. I know a story is going to be long in the news before most people do, because I can see how that group is responding. If you know how to watch how online communities engage.
Thank you for saying that. I run a couple of online communities. I have been running a Mighty Network since 2017. And we have our guidelines say no post and run. You can't,
like that.
Don't just come in and say that. I need reviews and then you're gone. One thing I see people are saying this whole thing about Facebook groups and all that. There are a lot of people who are migrating off Facebook and other social media, and and communities are kind of around what people care about. For instance, you can go onto the Mighty Networks homepage and search. There's a find a community. And so you could search your topic and see if there are other communities on there that are, I know there's one about parents with kids with diabetes, for instance, or probably true crime, and really find people. My community has 400 people in it and growing, and it's all about women and our many facets. So if you're writing books about women and how they survive in this weird world, we have a lot of writers, and we do virtual author events all the time. And if anyone is interested in that whole world, that's the other half of my life, is setting up online communities. So I'm happy to do an offline conversation with anyone who's interested in that world. And that last person that talked with us about podcasts, he mentioned Podmatch. And I posted, they have a Mighty Network community of people in podcasts. I put the link in our chat.
Great.
This has been really helpful, Amy.
Thanks. And thanks for sharing this idea too of, you sparked another idea. When you're in communities, see where the other people in the communities are hanging out. I find things like that. I find groups all the time. So like for my for my research, there's a really active group that has its own book club. And I found it someone just referenced it in a post. Oh yeah, we talked about that in our book club. I'm like, what is this book club you speak of, right? But that doesn't happen unless you're a member of the community, unless you're active, unless you're reading, unless you're engaging. Somebody had a quick question in here, a social media manager app. So there's Hootsuite, Sprout Social, Buffer. There's all kinds of social media management tools. So here's the risk. Algorithms do not like automated content. So it will downgrade anything you post through a tool, which for some people is still better than having no content at all. So at some point, I will probably, once I'm a little further down the path of having my blog up and running and promoted, I will probably have like tweets populated just for the activity, and maybe the occasional post as like as a safety net, just so I have activity on some of these pages. But you always want to be posting organically whenever you can. So I find the free version is what most people need, is all most people need. And I don't necessarily have a favorite, but whichever one you choose, do the tutorial. Learn how to use the tool, learn everything that it can do, and then use it as a way to keep yourself organized, use it as a way of kind of having that safety net. When I travel, I will schedule social posts, right? So I don't completely disappear. And I always take a hit in my numbers, but not as bad as if I had just like completely disappeared. So. All right. Just going down the page here.
If I can interrupt, so Barb had a follow-up question, which I think is a good one. Does automated content that is scheduled through Facebook or Instagram get downgraded too? Because now Facebook and Instagram have their own tools, like scheduler tools. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so I don't know for sure, but I will say that any platform always treats its own tools and content better than an outside tool. So I'm guessing it's treated better. I have not seen any measurement on that though. Good question. Now you're thinking. How do you keep up a social media campaign without feeling discouraged? This is a $1 million question. So I think understanding is something that I find really helpful. So one of the things that I try, especially new social media managers, one of the things I try to talk to them about is setting reasonable expectations. So for example, if you are following Nike and Apple and Chet, and you see that every single post has hundreds of engagements and thousands of comments, and it's just off the charts amazing. And then you put a post up and you have 4 engagements. You're like, oh, social media hates me. That's great. And it's incredibly discouraging. But that is literally, it's rooted in the fact that you're not looking at the math. Chet will get 150 likes because he has 150,000 followers. It's oftentimes the exact same percentage. They've just been around longer, or it might be a boosted post. There can be any number of things that influence that. So step 1 for me is trying to help people understand what's really happening so that you aren't comparing your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel, right? Because you don't necessarily know the whole story with them. I think the second piece then is to look at a linear path of how you're progressing on your own goals. So most of the time, if you're committed to social and you really are staying active and you're trying these different things and you're attending and you're growing webinars, you're going to see that slow bit of growth. So if you're kind of tracking your own progress, you will find that keeps you a little bit more motivated. And especially if you're also tracking to other goals, like maybe you want to reach a certain number of people, or you want to remember to tag 5 people in a week or something along those lines. Those goals you can win. I had another direct message. If you answer readers' questions about you and your work, what legal guidelines should you keep in mind to keep from being sued? Boy, that is incredibly interesting. I think that if anything is a risk, don't do it. That's kind of always been my rule. But if there's something incredibly beneficial, I would ask legal counsel. I have not run into that a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. But this day and age, because screenshots make everything permanent, even with small companies, anybody can and will be held to follow the laws. So if it's something that's even a little bit risky, I would say let it go. Okay, any other questions standing out here? I'm going to keep moving.
We've got what looks to be a 2-parter here from Nancy Sharkin. Says, a few years ago, you, Amy, had suggested a social media and fundraiser gal, Angela H., due to her increased family. We are wishing for a new gal for both our new book and also our nonprofit organization. So asking if you have any suggestions. And then a second part is, do you have any suggestions on how to share a chapter from a book for great outreach and results?
Share a chapter from a book?
Mm-hmm.
So hiring an intern or someone new to social media, I think that the 2 ways to do that are to contact colleges and universities. Most of them have sub-sites on their websites where you could post directly for interns. So the tricky part with interns now is that the most internships are paid. So you don't have to pay necessarily a lot. You have to pay something. And then if you do have someone who works part-time or for a little bit less, a little bit lower dollar amount, they probably need more guidance than someone that has more experience, more autonomy, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Personally, I would love to see authors come together to hire one person to work for, 4 or 5 authors, and to organize something along those lines, because oftentimes none of us have enough work for a person. And if you think about someone that is learning and growing and all of that, doing all that good stuff, it could be a great opportunity for them. It could be a win-win all the way around, but somebody's got to organize it. So that would be my best piece of feedback I have on that. As far as sharing a chapter of a book, that sounds to me like gated content. So gated content is awesome. So it's essentially a piece of information. So it might be a chapter of a book. It might be a form or a guide or something like that. Like I told you, I write textbooks. So it could be like a piece of a textbook, and you promote it and you say, it's all yours. If you want it, you can download it. You just have to share your name and email address. So most people, if they want it enough, they'll share their name and email address. We all get spam all the time anyway. What does it matter anymore? So that can be a good way to build your email distribution list. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant by the sharing a chapter, but that's how I typically see book content shared effectively. It's a way to grow your email distribution list. And by the way, if you grow your email distribution list, it's a great way to keep up and connect with people, but you can also upload your email list and contacts and cross-check with a Facebook paid campaign if you go that route. So then you've got the power behind Facebook with the people who've actually reached out to you, and a process called retargeting can occur. So they can put the ads in front of people that are that much more likely to engage with your posts and buy your books.
Right, Amy, you had taught this gal, this Angela. She was fabulous for us.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're willing to pay someone. We've gone the intern route, and it's painful.
Yeah.
I have to admit. So
it's a roll of the dice. They usually need a lot of guidance.
yeah, it's too much hand holding. Are you, if you have a student that
yeah, I'm teaching at St. Kate's starting in a couple of weeks. I can definitely take a peek and see if there's anybody that's getting pretty close to graduating or anybody that just graduated. And I can take a look at my network too, Nancy. I think I've still got your contact info, so I can definitely let you know. But really, put it out there. Post it on LinkedIn. It's that could be a good way too of connecting with people.
Patricia Angelo sends her best to you.
Oh.
She's on our board.
That's wonderful. Thank
She said,
you.
how do you know Amy?
You teach enough classes, you just kind of meet everybody.
Yeah.
There's a great question here. Where do I find a community? I love that question because that reminds me as an instructor that I take some things for granted. So I think of finding communities kind of like, do you remember the bars, monkey bars, I think they called them in schools? One led to the other and you just kind of kept swinging. Communities are like that. A lot of times one community will lead you to another community. So what I do is a search. It can be an internet search. It can be a search on a social media platform. It can be talking to nice people like Kelly and saying, hey, I need some communities. Who should I talk to? Like if you know people who know communities, but then you start the process and it's a little labor intensive, but you just start the process of getting to know the community and you don't have to marry it, right? Try it out for a couple of weeks. And if it's the wrong group or they're just not active, or if it's not really working for you, you can leave the group and you can kind of try a different one. But a lot of times one group will kind of lead you to another. So thanks for asking that.
We had one asking if you have email or other contact info that you can share or a website for folks to visit.
My plan was to have my blog up for you lovely people, and it's just not ready yet. But
if you share it with anybody on the board, we can probably share that with folks once you have it up and ready.
I certainly will. You can reach me at my private email. I just put it in the chat. It's just amy.jauman@outlook.com. It's probably the best way to reach me right now. I have something like 85 emails, but that one is a pretty quick way to get to me.
And then we've got one here. Many tech people I know hate email marketing. Many are, I'll kind of compress it, but many are cynical because of most of the world only talks to them when their computers are broken. Do you have any thoughts on reaching a cynical audience that's been messaged to death?
Are we talking about overcoming the tech people so that you can get help with the email list? Or are we trying to convince people to use an email list? Is that the goal of this? Am I reading that correctly?
I think that could be it. I kind of read it more trying to reach people who are in tech and kind of inundated with
in tech.
Yeah. People who do technology for a living. They hate, well, I'm part of that. We hate getting emails. We hate getting unsolicited emails. And we get spams and phishing schemes all day long, every day.
Yeah.
Everybody out there that tries to communicate to us by default is trying to manipulate us in some way.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
all that stuff just turns us off. So how do you reach me?
So I think it's so interesting that you said it that way. This is such a great case study for how important it is to meet people where they are. So first of all, if you know your audience, so if it works for everybody to do an email campaign and you know your audience doesn't like emails, then you are not everybody, right? You know it's not going to work for you. So you can just take it off your list. But where do you hang out? So if you think about, I like the experiential exercise when you are in your own community, like I am. I'm a true crime fanatic. Look back to the last 5 positive engagements you had, 5 things you found interesting, 5 articles you read, 5 ways that you engaged. Think about that and how it got your attention, why you had that positive response, and see what information you can glean from your own experience. And then if you have a few friends, maybe a few friends in tech, ask them the same question, but do it as an experiential exercise. Because if we're feeling overwhelmed and cranky, a lot of times the answer is, there's just no way to do it, and you can't see it. But if you do an experiential exercise, a lot of times that pattern will emerge.
All right.
Sorry, that's all I got. Hang out with each other in coffee shops. Maybe y'all just need to get offline.
Yeah, they're all over everybody's virtual these days. They're all over the place. Chocolate chip cookies could work. Reach me for chocolate chip cookies without the chocolate chips. That'll get my attention. That's true.
I do think, I mean, there are some social media platforms, like for a really long time, Pinterest was really big for people working in social media because it was the only platform that they weren't working on. So at the end of the day, social media strategists loved being on Pinterest because it didn't remind them of their work. So that was a fantastic place to sell to them. So maybe your tech guys are on TikTok or something like that. And
YouTube, maybe YouTube? TikTok. I've not looked at TikTok. Some of the how-to videos with YouTube are useful. How to do this tech thing that nobody knows how to do. Here's how to do it.
And YouTube, like all the platforms, they have paid advertising. So you can investigate into that. You can do test runs. You can A/B test stuff.
All right.
Amy, thank you so much for your time tonight. I think everybody really enjoyed the presentation. We'll keep the room open for a few more minutes in case anybody wants to chat, but otherwise I wanted to formally thank Amy for her time. I think everyone really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And thanks for having me.